All right, we'll try that again. We can always fix this in post, right? So welcome to the Boston Office 365 user group. This is our May 2020 session. We have on screen now all of our social medias. Please feel free to reach out to us. This is, after all, a community-driven event. We live based on your guys' feedback. So let us know what you like, what you didn't like, what you'd love to see from us in the future. We are all ears, all right? So here's a list of our organizers. We have Mr. Dimitri, who is on the line with us, and he will be doing a short presentation later on. Myself, I'm Mike Dixon, and Mr. David Pileggi is also here with us. Moving on, last month's session was breaking down the Teams architecture 201. It was hosted by DRC, and unfortunately, unlike what this slide says, this is actually not available on our YouTube channel yet, but it is still available on stream. So one of the nice things, we were actually talking about this just a little while ago, is since we moved to live events as a platform, you guys can actually go back and watch these without us having to do any processing on it. And those are available for up to 90 days. And hopefully by the end of that 90 days, we'll have them all up on YouTube. So keep an eye out for that. All right, since last time, so the big stuff that's actually happened, we actually had build actually just started a little while ago. So there's been lots and lots of announcements in there. Unfortunately, we didn't get to all of those here, but one of the biggest ones that everybody's been talking about is Microsoft Lists. So Microsoft Lists is going to be a brand new application that is coming out. That is essentially going to be like the big brother for SharePoint lists, but the idea is that it is removed from SharePoint. There's also some really nice evolutions that have happened in this product over the existing lists. Some of those features include you can do conversations or comments at the item level. So for each item level, like if you look in this picture right here, this item has a bunch of comments underneath it. So if you were to click on that, you would be able to see all of those. It's got kind of a more advanced version of the JSON coding that we're starting to see trickled out to SharePoint, but it's definitely several steps further evolved than that. And also a lot of real quick automation that's available to it. There's an advanced version of kind of conditional rules and things like that, as well as the ability to connect to Power Automate and PowerApps as well. So there's been lots and lots of conversations about this. If you go to this link up here, this aka.ms/Microsoft Lists, there's a landing page there with links to a ton of other content, including a Microsoft Mechanics video about this. There's an Intrazone episode that was largely focused on this announcement, and a couple other videos. So this is the one that a lot of people have been really hot and talking about in the past couple of days. So looking forward to that. In our other announcements, the rest of our announcements are actually largely all based on teams that we have. So there's been a whole bunch of Teams updates that have been pushed out. Raise your hand should be visible in most people's tenants right now. There are actually pre-join changes coming. I tried to get a screenshot for this slide for that, but I really couldn't find one. But they have it in one of the videos. The Microsoft Mechanics video actually goes over this. And what it is basically gives you a lot of upfront options for configuring your microphones, your speakers, your cameras before you actually join the meeting, including background blur. Like right now, you have to join the meeting and then you can activate your black background blur if you're doing the extra backgrounds after the fact. So that's interesting. Lots of good stuff in there. Also in the recently added meeting options that allow for things like only selected people being able to speak, or people coming in muted, things like that, that were only available in scheduled meetings. These options are now available in the Meet Now circumstances. So if you jump into a Meet Now meeting, there's now a button up on the top right. It's got a check and an X next to it. And if you click on that button, it brings you to the same page with all the same listing of options there. So that's really nice. And then in addition to that, we also have a ton of pop-outs that are coming available. So what this is a lot of people have been asking for the ability to kind of multitask within Teams. And it seems like Microsoft's approach to that is to give people the ability to pop out kind of certain sections of it so you can have multiple windows. So we're getting to pop outs that are going to be available for chats, meetings, and the most recent one is apps. Actually, I think both apps and meetings are relatively new. So look for those in the near future. Unfortunately, I could not find a lot of information on release dates for a lot of this. Other than I can tell you that I've seen raise hand available out in the wild for a lot of places. So I assume that that's general availability now.
We do have now.
Yeah. Nice.
In fact,
and you have it in general availability tenant?
Yes, that is correct. In fact,
Okay.
we actually had one team thinking that was called high five, and we're using it for high fives instead of raising hand. But
that's awesome. I love it. All right. And then other than that, I actually just left this slide in. This is actually from last month, but I figure this has had a really dramatic impact, and it kind of came about with very short notice. So there were lots of products were renamed with relatively short notice on those renames. And they went into effect very well, or at least for me, I didn't hear about it until about 2 or 3 days before it went into effect. So it is very possible that I just missed the previous announcements though. So this is a great slide for reference. Feel free to grab it, grab a screenshot now, or you can grab our deck off the website. All right. And our sponsor for this month is Turn Digital. And we're actually going to segue now into a quick presentation from Turn Digital about what they do and how they're going to make your lives easier. All right, so take it away, Dimitri.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right, so I have a few slides, but I really want to dive into a demo of a tool that we've built to help our customers getting used to coming back to the office amid all of the uncertainty that we have. So just to begin, very quick, we're a Microsoft Gold partner based here in the Boston area. We focus primarily on the Microsoft stack, covering Office 365, Azure, M365, as well as SharePoint on premises. And we've really built this company around hiring the best people from the industry, bringing everyone together under one roof, and really working to make sure that we help our clients achieve their business goals as efficiently as possible. So as a quick snapshot, we pretty much covered the full gamut of Microsoft Cloud work, starting from strategy and roadmap going all the way through to helping maintain and keep active environments, continuing adoption, as well as ongoing development. But what we want to talk about today is this wellness tracking app that we've developed. So the purpose of this app is, one, to ease employees' concerns about coming back to the office. A lot of employees that are being asked to come back, whether as part of Governor Baker's 4-phase plan or through other essential needs, they're concerned about coming into contact with COVID while they're in the office, or potentially things around the office as well. So part of this is to be able to somehow address part of these concerns. The second part is that if an employee contracts COVID and then sues the company that they work for, having some safeguards in place to show that the company has taken proactive steps to ensure that the risks of COVID spreading are minimal could help in a potential liability. And the third is to provide contact traceability of employees that may have interacted together by being in the same building or the same part of the building at the same time. So I'm going to dive into a demo to show you a little bit in terms of what this app looks like and what we could do here. So the first thing to show is that, we've built an app to essentially ask every employee, contractor, and visitor to complete a basic set of questions before they're allowed to enter into the office. Ideally, this was something that they would complete before even leaving their house. But in scenarios where people forget, could be a gate point at the reception area to ensure that everyone coming into the door has submitted their self-attestation for that day that they're still healthy. So we have two web apps that we've developed. One is the visitor version, which could be ideal for putting it onto an iPad in your reception area, or it could be for sending to your guests in advance to complete the morning of their visit. We also have an Authenticated App, which currently can work with single sign-on with Azure AD or Okta. And this way, you wouldn't have to re-enter your name and so forth every time. And this is a responsive web app, so this works across multiple devices and device types, as well as your desktop browser. So to give you a quick example, I'll come in here and I'll type in my name. So I'll call it Dimitri, Boss 365 User Group, company name Turn Digital. And part of what we're showing you here is this core app that we've developed that we are giving away as part of this implementation project. So at the end of this engagement, should you decide to work with us on this, you essentially have a copy of the code and you can build things further. So as part of the implementation that we offer, you can have your branding, your company logos, the colors. You can control all of the text that you appear here, including all the welcome messages, as well as the questions that you'll see in the coming screens. So you can have up to 10 different questions, essentially asking if you've had any of the symptoms. And every client that we're working with thus far has a COVID response team that is coming up with the appropriate questions to ask. So as we go through these questions, we essentially are following a lot of the guidelines of what the CDC is asking for. And then upon completing the survey, we have business rules that come back and calculate whether or not you're safe enough to enter the office that day. In the scenario, because I said yes to one of the questions, I'm being told that I'm not allowed to come in. And on the back end, we're taking this survey result. We're storing the result of the survey in a database. Now, we're not storing the response to every question because we don't want this to be confused for a medical record. So therefore, we're just stating the timestamp, the person, and whether or not they're allowed in. Furthermore, we can also have optional alerts that are sent to different distribution lists for when someone is not allowed in versus if someone is allowed in. The other thing is that because I'm currently in the visitor version of this web app, it'll actually auto reset itself back to the home page 10 seconds after getting this confirmation. So that way, if you have it in your reception area on a tablet, your receptionist doesn't have to constantly go and try to reset the URL back to the landing page. So now on the back end, because it's stored in a SQL database, we have a couple of Power BI dashboards that we've developed. So the first dashboard is our reception view. And I'm just going to refresh this here to get our latest attestation. So the intention behind this dashboard is that your receptionist would have the ability to verify that everybody that comes into your office, A, appears on this list, meaning they have completed the survey this morning, and B, that they're well enough for work. So as you can see here, there's no indication for which answers were answered correctly or incorrectly, but ultimately this could be a good stop check to come in. A lot of our clients are also having receptionists use a contactless thermometer to also take the temperature of everybody coming in as a second safeguard, but that's not being stored anywhere. Now, we've also created a second dashboard, which is a bit more of the management view. So the management view gives us more of a traceability in terms of which days different employees or contractors have completed the survey, as well as what their answers were. So if somebody is well enough for work and trending yes, and then all of a sudden they have a no, that could be used to take action to potentially reach out to that person, and then filter in based on the timestamp to see who else might have been in the office during those days when they attested that they had an issue. And because this is Power BI on the right side, if we expand all of this, we have a variety of different filters that we could use across the board. So coming back into the slides. So as part of this, we've put together a rapid deployment package, and ultimately with people coming back to work, some as soon as next Monday, some a little bit later in the coming weeks. We understand that time is of the essence in terms of being able to get something like this rolled out. So we're offering a scope for the starter package where you get this base app that I've just demoed to you. We can implement your branding, your logo, your colors. You control all of the text that appears on the different screens. And you can also have different text appearing for visitor screens versus employee screens. Then we would deploy that into your environment, into a one-tier configuration. So the data never lives with us. It's always in your environment under your control. We don't need access to any of your environment after the deployment. So you can follow your current procedures of how you store data like this. And then we'll give you the complete source code for internal use. We've licensed it in a way that you're able to, you have an irrevocable infinity license on the code base, so you can make any kind of changes that you want to build it further. But of course, you won't be able to resell it. So that being said, we're offering a very rapid 7 business day turnaround. So day 0, we're considering having a contract signed and us having all of the collateral that we have a nice intake form for. From there, we take 3 business days to do a rapid implementation and testing in our environment of your collateral, make sure your text looks good, everything else. And then we schedule 1 day to deploy it. Deployment takes about 4 hours just to have everything configured. And then from there, we open up a 3-day user acceptance testing window. We have one client that made this user acceptance testing window just a day long because they were eager to get it live as soon as possible. And besides a few minor text changes, they didn't have any problems. So we actually went live with the first customer today, and we have several more that are currently in this user acceptance testing phase. So we have, as part of this package, we also have a 4-hour window at the end of UAT to implement any changes, any kind of tweaks that come out of the testing, package that up, deploy that, and then essentially go live with it. So we're not charging anything for this base tool cost. We put a few developers on this for a few weeks to be able to go out and build it. And given the times that we're in, we decided the right thing would be to not charge for the base. But there is a one-time client-specific implementation cost of just under $4,900, which covers those 7 business days, so roughly a week and a half of the activities to make this actually usable within your environment. There's also an Azure cost. It's roughly $40 a month. If you have a free database available, this could probably be as low as $10 a month. If you have a lot of concurrent users, this could probably scale up to 100 or 200 a month. But these would be charged at actuals based on Microsoft's Azure subscriptions. So that being said, we have a 1-pager prepared summarizing what I've just shown you. You can access that by the QR code on the left or by going to the bit.ly address of the TRN Digital app. And if you're interested in learning more or having a demo specific and talking more details, please reach out to us at contact@turndigital.com, and we'd be happy to walk you through this and answer any additional questions. So that being said, thanks, Mike, for the time, and I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dimitri. All right. And very quickly, we're now actually just going to hand over to Rachel Cooper, who is going to be giving us tips and tricks for modernizing your SharePoint forms using PowerApps. Awesome. Take it away, Rachel.
Well, first let me unmute myself and then share my screen.
Good stuff.
So here's another view of the same thing. So thank you guys for having me do this presentation. This is just a little tips and tricks I do for SharePoint forms and PowerApps. Part of the problem that you have with SharePoint forms out of the box is you don't have that much flexibility. So this is some of the stuff that I do when I'm deploying out some stuff, different solutions within SharePoint. But first, here's a little bit about me. These are all my favorite people and fur people. So I obviously have a lot of animals, and I have a little boy named Austin, and that's my boyfriend Sully up there as well. They're very supportive and great, even the animals, even when they try and crawl on my computer when I'm working. So let me switch over to the next thing. So I'm just going to kind of go right into this. This is going to be a lot of demos. I figured what I could do is walk you guys through customizing the form for like a device inventory. I'm an IT person, so that's something that kind of is in my wheelhouse, and I think I've designed like 4 of those. So I figured might as well go with something I know about. So the first thing you want to do, and let me scoot over and show you my little demo list I have going on here. So what I've done is I set up a simple SharePoint list with, you know, just different types of devices that you would have in an inventory. And out of the box, it's a very plain, let me minimize this guy down here. It's a very plain setup. You know, I'm not going to show you the list because I've already played around with this a little bit, but it would throw all of your fields on there. And sometimes, depending on what you're trying to work with, you have a mobile device, you need the phone number, the subscriber carrier, but you won't need that if it's a computer. So when you're in your list, all you do is you go in PowerApps and you do customize forms. And it brings you right into PowerApps. And it takes a second. Loading, getting things ready. I tried to set this up so it wouldn't take forever. All right, so we're gonna, it always gives you this helpful thing that I turn off. So we're gonna skip that. So in here, you can see very plain. It would normally have all your fields here in this tiny little screen. For something like an inventory list, you might want more room in it. So what I always do is I make the orientation larger. So if you go over here, you hit File, and then in your settings, and you change your orientation to landscape, it gives you a lot more real estate on the screen. So all you do is you go ahead and hit Apply, and then back to your list. And you can see it does some crazy things over here. You've got this giant screen with this giant field in it. I'm going to close this guy out. And this right here is your form. So this is for people who really don't know PowerApps that much. Someone more advanced might be like, oh, well, you can do this, this, and this. This is just for very like beginnerish stuff. So if you go over here, you see you have your SharePoint form right here. What you can do is you can expand it out to give yourself more real estate. And then you have like this giant form here. What you can also do is you can add additional columns to your field or to your form. So if you go over on the right, I'm going to add 2 columns in this guy. And you can't see much now because I haven't had any fields. What I want to show you too, if you go in, you want to make sure you're on your form and you hit Edit Fields, you can actually add additional fields from your list in here. So hit Add Fields, and we're going to have assigned department, deployment date, device status, device type, employee, all the stuff that was on that form that we were just looking at. I'm just going to throw everything on here. And phone serial number. And I'm going to go ahead and add all of your fields in here. And you're going to notice something interesting. So we started off with title. and it's humongous. And all the rest of the fields are a different size. So one tip I have, this is part of my tips and tricks, is if you do this and you have a bunch of fields on here and you expand it, you add multiple columns to it, and you have some fields that are huge like this and tiny like that, I just delete all of the fields and re-add them. I don't know why it doesn't readjust for you, but that's one of the things that I normally do, because it's just there. You'd have to go in and adjust the size of this part of your what's called your card, which is basically your column in SharePoint or your field in here. So you'd have to go and adjust the size of that and where it aligns and this and this. It's just easier to select it and hit delete, and then it's gone. So that's one tip. And then I'm going to pop us over to the next tip, is adding a title bar. But actually, before I go on, are there any questions about what I just showed? I don't know who's doing the Q&A.
We are checking Mike Dixon as well. Hold on just a second.
Because I just don't want to go too fast for people. I know this is like a beginner, but I don't want to go too fast for people.
Rachel, so there is a bit of a delay between when you're broadcasting and when it's being cached and distributed outwards. So there could be up to a minute or so. So we'll let you know as the questions come in. We are keeping an eye on them. Okay,
awesome. Thank you. All right, so my next tip is for adding a title bar. So I'm going to, this is kind of gives you a breakdown, and I more wrote these for people for reference for later, because I know the guys publish the PowerPoints. So there are certain things you do. You insert a label on the screen, move the form down a little bit, expand the size of the label, set a background color, and change the text. But I'm going to show you exactly how you do that. So I'm going to go right back over my Power App. So I am going to go ahead and scooch this down a little bit. And I am going to insert a label. So a label is just like, it's basically like a text box. So I'm going to insert that. And if you notice on the left over here, the label is not inside of the form. It's above the form. So it's a separate part of this screen. So what I'm going to do is going to put it right up here. And I
Rachel,
could go.
We have a couple of questions that have just come in.
Oh, perfect.
So the question is, when you delete all the fields, do you delete the title field as well, or do you delete every field and then re-add them?
I delete everything. So if we go over, so in here, you could do this from over here. You can delete them from like just selecting them on the form and hitting delete. And this isn't deleting any of your data. This is just the field on the form. It just goes away. So you don't want to do, you can go in and just delete that guy. Actually, it won't let you because this field isn't unlocked. And all you do, go back in and edit, add a field, and I gotta remember which one I just deleted. I think it was subscriber carrier. Yes, and it just pops it right back on. So you just wanna, you can select it from here. You can and hit delete. You can select over here and hit delete, or you can go to edit and hit remove from here. They all do the same thing. That
awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Was there another question too?
Both were actually about the same.
Okay. All right. Okay, so back to the title. So for the title, what you could do is you can actually go on and like expand it and do all kinds of stuff. What I like to do is I want to make sure that this is, I'm a little anal, I want to make sure this is the same width as the form. So what you can do is you can actually select your label right here, and up on the top left you have all of the different properties of this label. And if you scroll down, you have width right here. So what's great about some of this stuff is you can go in and you can put a little very simple logic with pretty much with any property. So what I want the width to be is I want the width to be the same width as my form. So all you have to do in here is type in and it helps you. If you notice, it starts typing in for you, SharePoint Form 1, and see this is SharePoint Form 1. And then when you put in a dot, there's all of the different properties with that form. So I can just go in width. And now it's the width I want. And then you can adjust if you want to go and like say, I want to know exactly how what the height of this is, you can go in and you can do that. I'm not going to do it this time because I think that's a little bit much. So I'm just going to expand it a little bit. I want to take this and I like my title centered. So you'll notice up here in the menu bar by home, it kind of looks just like, you know, Microsoft Word or any other program where you can adjust the fonts here. So I'm going to make it centered. And then I'm actually going to fill in the back with, you know, you can pick any color, a color, and then I'm going to make the font bold. And I'm going to change the font to white. And I'm going to give this guy a name. So it's I can't type apparently. So there's the device inventory form, and I might want to make the font a little bit bigger. So there we go. And maybe a little bit bigger. All right, so now you have a nice title bar to the top of your form. And another thing with this is like you can see this is a blue. You can change it to all different colors. You can actually select themes in here too. So if you go in here, there's different themes and color themes. So we could like change this to purple. And then you'll notice this little guy is purple. And then when you go into your fill, it has theme colors. So we could make this a purple as well. So, oh, and the other thing too, if you want to make sure this guy's right on the top corner, if you click on it, again, I'm going back up to, I use this all the time, this drop down with all of the different properties. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you have your X and Y. I'm going to tell you a lot more about the X and Y later. But what this is your basically where you are on the form. Sorry, I can't talk today. So we're at 0 and Y is 0. So you're at the top corner. So you're going height and width is right over here. It's very confusing because if you go in here and they have the position as well over here, there's different parts within PowerApps where X and Y means pixels. So you have to be aware of like which one you're working with. So let's see. That was my next tip. All right, so this is kind of, you noticed I kind of used the purple before. So that's how to add a title bar onto your form. The next one is to add columns and fields, but just interrupt me if people have questions on the title bar thing. I was trying to go a little bit slower this time because I tend to talk fast. So we actually kind of, I skipped ahead. We kind of already did this. This is where you change the orientation and they're different sizes. So delete them and then re-add them. So I'm going to skip this slide. All right. So one really, really important thing to realize, whoops, is that when you make changes in SharePoint, you rename a column, you add a column, you delete a column. Those changes do not get sunk up to your Power App. You have to refresh it. And it can be, when I was first designing these, I was very frustrated because I could not find the refresh button for the life of me. So I have to show you this. So we're going to go in the demo and I am going to go to our list. And I'm going to make a change to it. So I want you to see what that is. So I'm going to go, just for the heck of it, I'm going to add another column.
Yeah, Rachel, while you have that column, we do have another general question in the Q&A.
Sure.
So C writes, what's the best practice for SharePoint forms when you have multiple environments? For example, if you customize the form from SharePoint, you land in your default environment. But if you prefer to build in a different environment, what's the best practice? Like build the forms first in PowerApps, package, and then deploy and share. Just curious with multiple environments. Sorry for the long question. Thanks in advance.
Okay, I'm trying to understand a little bit. So is he talking like a standalone app? Do you think?
I think the question is more if we have like a separate site, let's say for dev, stage, and production, what's the best way to promote your changes across?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is going to go into something I'm going to go into like towards the end, is your form is only tied to this one list. You can't export it. You can't migrate it. It really is just tied to the one list that you've created. That's kind of one of the drawbacks of customizing the forms with PowerApps. If you do a standalone Canvas app that may link to the different areas, then you can actually export that and back it up, and you can actually move it from one place to another. Does that?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's honestly, it's like my last slide of here's like the difference between the two. So, all right. So
that begs the question here, Rachel.
mm-hmm.
What happens if you actually do this and then save your list as a template? Does it actually bring this with it, or does it not?
I don't believe it does, because the Power App has its own like app ID, but I haven't tested it, so I can't completely answer that one. I have not tested that myself, but that's, now that you can save a list template, that's something to check out. That would make life a little bit easier. I'm used to making them all over again from scratch. All right, let me scooch back over here to device inventory. So I'm going to go like we were doing before, and I'm going to click on our form. I'm going to edit fields. I'm going to go add a field, and I called it what, like add me or something like that. It's not here. It's not available to me. So to refresh your data source, if you go over to the left and you go all the way down where this guy is, and I got to tell you, it used to be a completely different way of doing this. So finding this button when they moved it was not fun. So if you click on this, which is your data sources, and you just go over here and you hit refresh, what this does, it scares you for a second because it makes everything red, and then it comes back. But now if I go back to here, click on my form, go to edit fields, add fields, there's my add me, and I can add that if I want to. And honestly, I've seen issues too when you rename a column and you already have it on your Power App or your Power App form, and say you've what you can do is I'll go into this in a second, is you can unlock a field, and when you do that, it kind of it messes up the refresh, but it gives you so many more options of trying to customize stuff. So by the end of setting up a form, I usually have every single one of my fields unlocked. So if you rename it, you actually have to go in and rename it all over the place in this advanced tab where all this stuff is grayed out. So, and I can actually, let me show you that really quick. So I have add me here. I'm going to go back here, and I am going to go, we'll do endless settings. And where's my add me? And I'm just going to call it rename. Hit OK. Go back in device inventory. And again, I renamed it. It hasn't done anything over here. And then I go in, I refresh, and now I have an error. So when I click on this, if you notice, we have add me over here. we see the data is add me and the display name is add me instead of rename. I could just delete this and re-add it, but say I've, added a bunch of formulas in here and I don't want to do that. You unlock all of these fields and you have to change the data field in here manually to rename, and then it should fix it. Name, rename. Oh, it's being bratty. Hold on. This is what when I go off of my script. Oh, there it is. Default, and then this little thing that comes up, I totally jumped over it. If you hit over here and you're having errors, it's the app checker. It's fantastic. You go into formulas, you click on it, it brings you right to the error. So you go in here and rename. And now no errors found. Super happy. And then your error is gone. But you can see like how this can go sideways on you when you change things out. So it's a really good idea to know what you're doing and like what fields you're going to have on here before you start on your form, because it can get a little hairy when you have to change some stuff. So let's go over here. So
Rachel, we have another quick question coming from
Yeah.
Naveen. Does anyone know how to change the default mobile layout of PowerApps? I want to do access like print to PDF. I only have access to Canvas apps, the landscape defaults to non-computer interfaces.
Are you talking about like, so for Canvas apps?
Yes, it sounds like they're trying to change the default mobile layout for Canvas apps.
I think it's in the same spot. But I don't know. This is more about like doing the form stuff. I have way more experience with the SharePoint forms than the Canvas apps. So that's kind of where my expertise is, if you can call it that. It's just, I haven't, unfortunately, in the places I've been, they haven't really embraced the Canvas apps, even though you can do a lot of really cool stuff with them.
That being said, if they're asking the question, how can you print and then turn into a PDF? That is a multi-stage process. I've had to do that internally at Staples. And the way to do that is to actually use Flow, and you have to basically create a button in your Power App that calls Flow, builds the entire Word setup, whatever, turn it into a document, drop it into OneDrive, not into SharePoint, but OneDrive, because only in OneDrive do they have convert to PDF right now. And then once you create the PDF, yeah, good time. So once you're done creating the PDF, then you go ahead, grab said PDF from OneDrive, and then do what you need to do with it, whether put it into SharePoint or to somewhere else. And then after that, you'd probably want to also have the Flow clean up after itself, or else it gets really messy really quick.
You're giving me flashbacks of something I had to do a while back there, where they had to have a PDF from something. I think it was even from a SharePoint list. And I'm like, oh my God, guys, you don't understand how hard this is.
Oh yeah, good times.
Yeah. I'm having like, war like PTSD right now from that. All right, so let me scooch back over. All right, so updated changes to columns and refreshing. So we went over that. Okay, so this is super common, is you want to be able to show and hide fields on your form based on other fields. So for my example, in my device inventory, I'm going to do this with a couple of different fields in here. So let me scoot over. So what you can end up having is you want to show and hide things based on like, I have manufacturer here, and then I have a model. We have, a mobile device. We don't want the phone number on there. So we actually probably want to rearrange this form a little bit too, now that I'm looking at it. but you want to kind of conditionally arrange this. So first things first, I'm going to, because this is going to drive me nuts because stuff is everywhere on here. I am going to go and move the fields around a little bit. So when I'm showing you this, it makes a lot more sense. So if you go in, you can actually move fields around in two ways. You can do it from within the form itself by grabbing it here, or you can use our nifty little, where is it? Our nifty little edit fields button over here, and you can move them around in here too. I actually, in some ways, prefer to move some things around in here, and I'm just gonna minimize all this to make my life easier. Just because you could grab the wrong thing in here, and then you're like, oops, by the way, there's an undo button. So let's see, I'm gonna take employee, move it up here, and then we'll do department. Let's see. All right, actually, I'm going to go device type, and then assign department, deployment date, device status, whether it's deployed or not. Device status. We'll scoot that up there, and you can see this kind of just rearranges everything. And you kind of can do it as you get some logic in it. I just kind of want to have a couple of things lined up so they make sense. And I'm actually going to delete this rename thing. So I'm going to look at deployed first. So I have two options. And by the way, I'm holding down the Alt key on my keyboard. And what this does is let you preview the changes, or you can use this guy over here and you can preview your app a little bit. But what's interesting about this is when you close it, it yells at you and said, did you know you can hold down the Alt key and do this? So I'm going to hit down Alt key, and I'm going to hit inventory. So if something's in inventory, it's not assigned to an employee, and it's not necessarily assigned to a department. It doesn't have a deployment date. So what you can do is you can actually click in here. And what I do first is we're going to base our logic off of this combo box. So we're clicking the actual combo box within this, what's called a card itself. So if you look over to make sure you have the combo box, it'll say combo box on the top, and you can rename it right here. And I'm going to call it combo. And then I try and make it as obvious as humanly possible. So we're going to do combo box device status. So we've now named this to something that makes sense. So the fields that we do not need to show if this is not deployed is employee, because it's not assigned to an employee. So there's a nifty little property in here called visible. So what you do is you go into visible up here, make sure you have the whole card selected, and default is true. So what you do is you just type in, and this is an if statement, but you don't have to start it with an if. You can actually just start typing in the name of the combo box. So if combo box device status, and then you hit a dot, and this gives you more of the different parts of that field. And you want selected. And then you hit dot again. And your only option is value. Equals. And then you put in the text. So if it's deployed, it shows. But if it's inventory, it doesn't show. Hold on.
And we actually have one question.
I think it did. I did it backwards. Hold on. Hold on. Sure. Go ahead.
Sure. So the question is, does the movement of the fields and columns carry through to the list in SharePoint?
No, it does not. They're completely independent. So if you're moving them around, the order around on here, it has nothing to do. So I've moved everything around over here. And then if you go in and we go back to device inventory, it's exactly the same.
So that brings up a secondary question beyond that. So, you know, in the list settings or library settings for that matter, when you have the ability to change the order of how the columns are viewed in the quote unquote out of box, wow, my brain just stopped working. That's awesome. Wow.
I think that's happened to me like 3 times today, so it's fine.
Oh, well, that's good. At least we're in good company.
Yeah, exactly.
So so the out of box form that would allow the columns to actually switch places. However, that being said, because this is a modified form using PowerApps, clicking into there is not going to have any effect at all because it's been modified by PowerApps.
Yeah, because they're basically 2 separate entities. So they're not. Yeah, it's using. So you're kind of making like this is like a Canvas app that's just tied specifically to that SharePoint list. And you can actually tie it to multiple SharePoint lists, this one form, and I'm going to go over that in a little bit. But the main thing is that there's a SharePoint integration to it. And like if you do a Canvas app, you're not going to get this. And I go over that a little bit later on too. But if you notice too, so I just want to make sure I answered your question, Dave, right?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute, but yes,
okay.
that's exactly what I was believing it to be the case. However, I just wanted to be sure.
Oh no, I hear you. Especially, it was funny. I had set this up and wanted to do this presentation before, and then they were like, "Oh, you can customize your forms," and I'm like, "Damn it!" But it can't do anywhere near what you can do in PowerApps. So, all right. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this back to deployed. And actually, I'm going to move this guy around the way that I don't like to move it over here. So you can see that it goes inventory and deployed. So it'll go in and out, you know, and make it viewable and not viewable as you go. Another place you might want to do is, let's see, device type. You could do the same exact thing. So you go in, combo, device type, and we want, if it's a mobile device, you want to see all of this stuff. The IMEI number, the phone number, the serial number you need for both, or the subscriber carrier. So one thing you can do though, if you're doing multiple fields based on this, you can go in. So I've renamed this. I don't need this for everyone. So I'm going to click on the field again, do the same thing as far as visible, and I'm going to go in and write combo box device type dot value, dot selected dot value, and then have it equal all right. So this will be viewable if it's a mobile device, right? So if we change it and we go back to computer, that goes away, we show it. But we have all these other fields where we kind of want to do that too. So one thing you can do, rather than rewriting this over and over or copying and pasting it, is you can actually apply this same, you can reference this formula right here from other, from the other cards. See, it's catching. Now my brain's not working. You can reference this formula from other cards. So if we go down to phone number and we go to visible, we can start typing in the name of the IMEI data card 1 dot visible, and you're just referencing that on all of them rather than writing the entire field again, or the entire formula again. 1 dot visible. So now if I go in here, I'm hitting my Alt key again, and I change it to computer, all those guys go away. So that's pretty
And we
neat.
have one recommendation from Paul Tower. Paul mentions, remember to reset the visibility on opening the form, otherwise it'll remain hidden.
It will, but you can have, if you're doing a new form, then you can actually have it do some of that logic within here. So it changes it to new. And you can have multiple forms within an app. So you could have it, you know, point to a different spot. But yeah, I get what he's saying. And you could actually go further into the into this guy. Oh, where is it? Let me Alt and device. And I went with like the shorter way of writing visible, but you could actually do commas. Let me go on this one. You can do commas out after it, and then have this be false, have this be true, and then false, and then it will default. The only problem with that is you actually have to go in and write if. So then by default, it would be false, or it would be, you can switch around the true and the false is basically what I'm getting at. So you can flip them around that way too. It's just a longer stretch of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over. All right, so one thing that can happen is you're arranging your fields on the form. You can go, and it can go haywire on you, especially if you have a form that has a lot of rows and a lot of columns. I've been in the case where I'm like, oh my God, why is everything going everywhere? And then sometimes when you go and refresh things, it moves stuff on you, trying to quote unquote help you. So one thing I do when I'm doing larger forms is I will sit there and I will map out what's going on what row and what column. Oops, I keep hitting I have a new mouse and it keeps going to the wrong stuff on me. So so I keep going to click, sorry. So it can be a bit of a struggle. So if you go in and we look back over here, this is kind of all jumbled together and everything's snapping to a different spot, which I do like the snap to columns, but it can get a little annoying. It doesn't always update exactly where something's supposed to be. So I had mentioned the X and the Y's before. This is kind of the slide for that. So if you look at any of the fields over here, and this one I would advise looking on here because then you can see both of the X and the Y's. So if you go into device status and more options, so X and the Y is your column and your rows. So this is row 0, column 0, row 0, column 1. And if you look in, and I want to see if I have an example of it, sometimes what it will do is it will add something. It'll rearrange it and it will say this, I'm going to force it. So it'll say this is on, you know, this is 1, 2. And it will say also this can be 1. Sorry, it's trying to help me. And then 2. And it looks fine and it's jumping, your stuff will jump all over the place. So what I'll do sometimes is map everything out and I go in and double check to make sure everything is in the correct row and column. Because sometimes you want to go in and have like the manufacturer on top of the model. You want to have them and have nothing to the right of it. So you'll specify, rather than having PowerApps rearrange it for you, you can specify the X and the Y and move your columns around. Like say I want phone number to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want this to be at 0 and 6. So I want to move that guy down there. So it can go really, really sideways on you, especially too if you go to add or reload or change something. Like if I decide to get rid of this guy, it just helps me a lot. And then you go to do undo, and it will not put everything back the way it was because it's moved everything around on you. So it can get really, really frustrating to say the least. So that's the importance of the X and the Y thing. And I've made these crazy matrix for any like large forms that I have created. So just let me know if there's any questions on that one. I know it gets a little weird, and that's why I write it out, because I can mix things up with my 0s and my 1s and the 2s and the 3s and so on. So
Rachel, we have one question in the Q&A right now.
yeah.
So somebody anonymous writes, right now when they need to personalize lists, they sometimes use Microsoft Forms that has some limited branching, and then using Flow to insert that into a SharePoint list. So this is, they say it seems the learning curve for PowerApps is a little bit steeper than for Forms.
Oh, definitely.
But PowerApps gives you a lot more. So, when would be an appropriate time to upgrade from Forms into PowerApps?
I would, one good thing about let yourself get comfortable with PowerApps and really play around with it. One thing that's good about it is when you save a form and you're messing around with it in your interface here, the people can't see this. They only see this when you publish it. So when it gets, I think you'll figure out when it's time to like go to the next step and be like, I really need this to show and hide stuff. I really don't want them having to go to a different screen to enter stuff. I want them to just do it right from the list. I would say go in there and give it a shot, like, and just play around with it and see what makes the most sense. And there's tons of training out there. Most of the stuff I've learned with all of this has been online training, going to different MVPs pages and watching their YouTube videos. April Dunham's amazing. She's really breaks down a lot of this stuff, and don't be scared when you see something that says it's for a Canvas app, because most of that does apply to these PowerApps as well. So I would go in and get yourself comfortable first and then cut over to it. Because you can kind of be like, you can get yourself, just don't put the pressure on yourself to move over, is what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is do it when you're ready to publish it. And I would just get it when it's I think you're going to know when it's like a little bit more complicated and branching is not going to get you necessarily what you need. But I think it's great that you're using forms to insert stuff like that. Kind of a nice way to make like an easy form, Does that help?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel.
Okay. All right, so that's the craziness of the X and the Y.
And Rachel, we have one more question that just came in.
Yeah.
C writes, are there any got-yas if one renames any of the cards in PowerApps that refers to a SharePoint list, or is it better not to rename the cards?
No, actually, it's kind of cool. You can do a lot of stuff with that. So the cards, especially when you unlock them, like how I took this, take any of them. Let's take this deployment date, or I don't know, let's do assigned department, and you unlock it. It's, again, they're two separate entities. Like if I kept this locked and I changed it, I think it will update this. But it will mess up any formulas that are referenced to this. So that's why it can still be a mess to rename fields and stuff. But when you unlock this, again, this is completely separate. I can change this to assign departments and it doesn't make a difference. Now, keep in mind that this field now is not going to match your column in SharePoint. You can actually do things where you like add, concatenate stuff. You can do programmatically, like, with the formulas, change this. Like I said, anything you put in here has a formula in it. So you can change the name based on other fields if you wanted to. So, but it won't affect the SharePoint list, but just remember your fields are not going to match. So if someone's going in and looking at this, and I changed this guy, this guy to something completely different, then it may cause questions or confusion. So I think that's my answer for that one.
Thanks, Rachel. And we have one more.
Okay.
Do you have to publish it in order to test it in a view that's inside of a list?
No. You don't have to publish it. You just save it until you're ready to publish it. So it's not like, well, I think you're talking view within a list. No matter what view is, you're going to have the view you're in, you're going to have the same SharePoint, the same PowerApps form, no matter where you are. So it doesn't matter what view you're on in on the SharePoint list. So yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Rachel, so I think the question was, if you're developing it here, how do you preview it in the context of a SharePoint form without publishing?
Oh, okay. So just how you're doing it right now, like right now I'm previewing it, and you can hit play right here. And what it does is it pulls some of the data, or at least one record. This is the top record, or the top, that's in the list. So you can go in and test your stuff here before having it be in the list. The only thing I think you wouldn't be able to show unless you created one was like a new form, because what it does is it takes like the first record and shows you. It's the Tony Stark was my first one. But one good thing in here is I can change this all I want to. I can say it's a Microsoft something and it's a computer. It's not when you're previewing it in here, it's not actually changing the values on the list on you. You're just using this as kind of test data. So it's good to have at least one record in there to try things out with. I would definitely suggest that. But yeah, unless you publish it, you're not gonna get, you're not gonna have it pop up on the side, basically. And honestly, the experience isn't really different than looking at it here.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so I'm going to scoot to the next one. So one thing I definitely do, and I recommend doing, is to make your fields required in PowerApps and not in SharePoint. I know that sounds crazy, but I would definitely, I've run into a lot of issues where I don't realize I've set a required field on a SharePoint list, and then people are trying to use the Power App, and they're getting weird error messages, and it's just very confusing. You're part of my like 4 things I have here. There's a lot more flexibility. You can use conditions to enable and disable the requirement. You can make custom error messages, and it's just easier to have it in just PowerApps. So if we go back over here, one thing we did is we have device status, right? And if it's inventory, the employee name goes away. But if it's deployed, I want to know who the employee is going to have, who has this device is. So what you can do is you can actually unlock the property, and I can make this guy, if you see over here, there's the required field. I can save it, change it to true. And now it's required. Problem is now, I try and enter something in inventory, I'm going to get an error message every time I save it because that field is now required. So what you can do is you can go in, select your card that you had before, and look, required's on my drop down over here. We only want this to be required when it's visible, right? So why not just go in and type in, let's see. The name of this card is Employee Data Card 1, and we're just we want to reference the visible field. So this will only be required when that card is when this card is visible, and this is set to visible. So you don't run into this, because I can tell you I did, and that's how I figured out how to fix that. I was like, oh yeah, that's why it's not working. And you can do that with all the other parts here. If you go back to mobile device, you can go in and just have, you know, this is kind of your base card that you're going to base everything off of, and you can do the same thing as far as going in and going, not height, required, again, oh wait, I can't do it, I have to unlock it. And I go IMEI, data card 1, dot visible. And let's just copy this guy. And we can set unlock. And actually, if you want, you don't always have to write your formulas up here. I just tend to. I can just go in here, paste that guy in there, unlock, paste that in there, unlock, and paste that guy in there. And if you notice, as I'm making these required, it's adding a little asterisk next to everything. I would just leave that. Don't try and rearrange it. It's great. It just pops it in there and is like, yes, this is now a required field. It has a little asterisk that most people know is a required field. So now that we have all these required fields, we want to, you know, go in and maybe you want to have a custom error message. What I've done is I did a little print screen. So I have the serial number set as a required entry. So this is the out of the box. An entry is required or has an invalid value. Please correct and try again. So that's the canned out of the box error message. Maybe you want to be a little bit nicer and say, hey, please enter a serial number. So what you do is, and this is, I'm putting this here just for reference, but I'm going to show you exactly where you put it. So you enter into the text property of the field's error message control. So this is, I am awful at this today. So this is the text that you would put in there. If is blank, parent error, da 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 da. So it's basically an if statement. If this field is left blank, go to parent error. And there's a whole list of different errors and what the text says based on it. And I put a little link to it down here. So if is blank, parent error, you blank that out and you put in your custom error message. So if we go in, and we'll go phone number. We click on the card. If we go on here, and you're probably wondering where that error message is. If you look underneath the card, there's your star, and there's your error message. These got added when we made this required field automatically. So if you go in error message right here, and you can see the text is parent error. So you write if is blank. Please enter me. Yeah. And it's just a little bit nicer than just the out of the box error message you're getting. So now if we go in and test this, this is one thing you can't test unless it's been published because you're not entering data or saving data. So I can't like preview this, but it would come up with like the nice error message, kind of like we have right here. So are there any questions related to the required fields? And I know there's a delay.
We do have a question on the last topic.
Okay.
So regarding the column and row formatting,
Yes.
how does that work on mobile devices?
Well, for mobile devices, so one trick on one of those got-yas you got for the list forms is you can't view one of these Power App forms, SharePoint forms on a mobile device. It doesn't work. You can do it. On a Canvas app, yes, you could do it. And generally, if you're developing a app that's going on a phone, you'd probably keep to the phone layout, which is one long list of different fields. So I think, yeah.
Just out of curiosity, because of that statement, when you do make changes to it and someone does come with a mobile device, is SharePoint smart enough to actually present with the out-of-box generic form instead?
I think so. I haven't, again, it's another one I haven't tested because I generally I haven't, anything that I do on a phone, I use, that one I have made Canvas apps for phones. Because if I remember correctly, I think it just shows up as like the standard list with just the forms fields on it. So it can be kind of messy if you're showing and hiding fields because it's not going to have that logic in it. So it's kind of a bummer. At the end, you're going to hear me basically say that I would rather do Canvas apps than do the SharePoint forms because of certain limitations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Anything else?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's my required rant. So another thing you can do, and here to make really pretty forms, is you can add separators to the forms. Here's an example of, the device inventory that we've been looking at. You can add little bars to separate them out. You can change the background fills. There is a little trick to the bars part. I mean, fills is pretty easy, but let me show you the bars demo. So if you go in here, and what a lot of people would do is you just enter, if you want to separate multiple forms on a form like this, on a screen like this, then you would add the bars as like a rectangle. But the thing is there's no inserting a rectangle in between these cards on the side. So what you do is once you've figured out your layout, say we want to have a little bar over here, is you go to the actual card, make sure you're clicked on the card where you want to have a bar at the top of it. You go to insert your icons over here, and I hit insert over here, icons, and then you scroll all the way to the bottom-ish, and then there's a rectangle. So we're going to unlock and add it because we hadn't unlocked this one yet. And this rectangle we're going to make really skinny. So we're going to make the height of it 3. And we are going to adjust the width. We want it to be the width of the entire card. So again, we use our little trick where we go in and go to, well, you can actually go parent width, because this is a parent. This is the parent is the card name. And then I can drag and drop this to try and line it up, or I can go into the X and the Y and have it be 0 and 0. So now you have a bar at the top. And what you can do, since you've now arranged this, you can hit copy, click on the one next, it's right next to it here, go ahead and hit paste, and it always puts it at 40 for some reason. So you go back over here, X is fine, Y we're gonna make 40, or we're gonna make 0, I'm sorry. So it goes to the top right corner, or top left corner. And I've noticed this, it puts in, when you copy and paste, I have no idea why. If we just copied and pasted the same thing, so if you're seeing like a little bit of difference in width, it's because for some reason when you initially put it in, it gives it a border. So I'm going to make the border 0. Did it actually take that? Border 0, and then I'm going to hit this guy and make the border 0. And now they look completely even across. The other thing I showed on my example was changing the background colors. That's another way that before I figured out this like line thing, is I would go in and kind of separate and section off the form by just changing the background color, and it's super easy to do. You just select it. Over on the right, on the section, you can change the fill right here, and if you notice, it's got your theme colors again, so it tries to keep you and not make completely hideously looking forms. So you can just fill that in and fill that in. Now, could I have been fancy and said, oh, have Phil look at the fill for this thing? Totally, you can do that. I just happen to not want to. So that's kind of how I separate the forms, and it looks a lot better in my example here than what I just did on the screen there. So, because I'm trying to do it on the fly. So that's a good way of like just breaking up a form and making it a little bit easier to fill and a little easier on the eye. So just checking. Any questions?
So far, no questions.
Okay. All right. This is one of my favorites, is the cascading dropdowns. And I have this broken down more for if someone wants to duck later, how to set up cascading dropdowns. And it's very wordy up here. Basically, there's 3 steps to it. And I'm going to show you an example of it. So I'm going to scoot back over to my form. What I've done is I have a manufacturer and I have a model. And right now, if I hit the Alt button here, I see all these different, I change it to Motorola, but I see like everything. Like you see laptops in there, I see, Samsung stuff, I see Apple stuff. So I want, when I select Motorola, for only the Motorola stuff here, or for Apple, only the iPhones to show up. So what you do, and you can do this on, you create 2 lists. And I did this on the same site collection, but you can have this on a separate site collection if you want to. Just make sure your permissions are okay. Is you can go in and have it reference the list and use that to filter your results on this other field over here. So what I have is I have a list for manufacturers right here. And then I have another list for device model. And I have all of the device models and just a lookup. So it's looking up at the manufacturer list. So you have that all set up. I have that all set up already. And like I said, this is in this site collection, but you can have it in another site collection. I'll show you how. So if you go over here, and first we're going to be referencing this combo box here. So we want to do the same thing we did when we renamed these guys. We want to rename it to something that makes sense. So combo MANF. So we're going to call it that because I don't want to write out the whole world or the whole word. Okay, so we've renamed this because we're going to reference this. We're going to click on the combo box over here that we want to go in and we want to filter. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit depends on. So what depends on is where you're going to match a value from one list to the value of another. So first we're going to change here, and there's our combo manufacturing. We want to have this value over here match. Oh, wait, I don't see that device list thing. So what you're going to do is you're going to add a data source. So you click on this. It brings up your data sources over here. You just search for SharePoint, if I can spell it right. You already have a login to SharePoint. So you click on it. It will bring your most recent sites, but you can also search for different sites. I'm going to click on inventory or information systems. And then here's my list of models. And I'm going to go ahead and hit connect. So then we're going to click on depends on again. And what's really irritating, it changes. It doesn't take the changes you made once before. So you have to do it again. So combo box, the value, and now when you go over here, you'll see the two different data connections here. We want device model. And then if we hit the down arrow, we want it to match the manufacturer lookup that we have on this list. So we're going to click on that and then hit apply. All right, we're not done. There's actually more you need to do here. So up at the top, you'll see it says manufacturer lookup equals this value. It's not going to match because we actually need the manufacturer lookup dot value. So this would be like the step 2 of getting this stuff set up. First, you do your depends on, then you have to edit the formula at the top. And then we go over here, and then but wait, there's more. So the other thing that's very interesting, and I don't know why it does this, but if I'm still on this combo box, the same combo box, right? You have to go into fields over here and hit edit, because for some reason, it always defaults to compliance asset ID, which is like some system field that I don't really care about right now. What I want it to show for text is the title from the device model list. So you want to switch these both back to title, or to title, close out. And now I get this little error message, but I'll tell you about that in a second. If I hit Alt and I have Apple chosen, I only see the iPhones. I switch it to Dell. I only see the Dell laptops. I switch it to Microsoft, and I only see the Surface, the Microsoft stuff. So this little error message that you're seeing right now, or like warning, is basically because instead of just going in and hitting the drop down, you can search if you have a super long list, and it's giving you a warning that if there's a lot of entries, the search might not work. If you have a short list, you do have the option, or you just don't want to see this little, warning sign here, you can actually go on the combo box here and then go over to the right here and turn searching off. And then it goes away. You won't be able to search, but if it's a short list, you might not want to search. Or you might want it because there are some people who prefer not to use their mouse and just tab through an entire form. So that's how you create a cascading dropdown. My favorite things ever.
Very nice, Rachel. Rachel, we have a question on the previous topic. Is it possible to put in a different background image, not just the color for each section?
You know what? I know you can put be careful with doing big images. I was really into that. And it really slows down your app. It really, really does. So if you wanted to, what you could do is you can go in, and I'm selecting the entire form right now, and you can have the color and have it be see-through. So it's like, or see-through, transparent. God, what an awful IT person. So I click on that, and then I can go in here and insert, and where is it? Media, and then an image. and you can upload an image and then have that stretch in the background. And it can look really, really cool, but you're really slowing down the load time on your app. So just be aware of that. Oh, and to get the image, oops, clicked on the wrong thing. To get the image, you just add an image file and then browse out and you can grab it. So. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Cool. I know, I wish I could make it that pretty. I'm like, I had a really cool one. It just kept spinning forever. So these next slides are basically just going over the cascading drop downs, just if you need to reference it later, like all the different things, because it's a lot. And this kind of, we already kind of talked about this, but this is saving versus publishing. So form can be saved but not published. And then when you can tell kind of from this like preview over here. Okay, so I was working on this a lot yesterday, like messing around with this, and I have all these versions, and my latest one I was working on was not live. It was a version back that was the actual live published one. But what's handy is you go in and you really make a mess of a form and you're like, oh my God, I wish I could just go back to the beginning. You can go and open up a version. It will actually won't throw away everything. It will go in and make it a new version. So like this version 1, which was kind of my reset, quote unquote, for this, it's like, I think it's version 1 and it's version 9 and there's like different ones in there. So you can get back and undo some of your changes if you kind of make a mess of a form. And you can see it keeps the versions for the last 6 months. So like I have this here and I can actually go to File. I'm going to save this as a version. I'm going to see all versions. And this is what's live right now. I'm actually going to go to version 9. And it's going to yell at me because if you notice, it keeps the tab open up here, and hit restore and it's going to say, this will be saved as version 12. And then it's yelling at me, wait, Rachel Cooper has it locked. Let's close out of that guy. We're going to leave. Let's try that again. Restore. And then go back in here. Here's my device inventory. And it's funny because it brings you back to the SharePoint list. And then when I hit new, see it goes back. I lost everything I just made. Not really, because it's in another version because I saved it. Or I can go back here. And actually, hold on, I got the thing in my way. Yeah, so I can go back in here and be like, oh, crud, I didn't want to do that. Go back to your customized forms. Oh, look, that's kind of what my example looked like. So you can see now I have this in here and I can go in and, oh, you know why it was showing that on that? I didn't even think about it, is if I went in to device inventory, my published version is the super pared down one, but this isn't published yet. So I could go in and then go save and then publish to SharePoint. So this kind of was my like, oh, look, I just baked a cake out of the oven. Like I'm Julia Child. Beautiful form. So that's the difference between saving and publishing. What's really good, the best benefit of just saving things is you can go be working on something, save it, and you're not affecting the users. They're going along their merry way and they're not seeing the changes. So you can really work out the bugs and you're not working live on the form. So, Okay, SharePoint integration actions. So what that is it's basically this guy right here. This is only on SharePoint. PowerApp Forms is where you're going to see this. And what you do is you click Advanced, and what it can do is you can add more logic and more automation depending on the actions of when you're doing a form. So if you have a form that has you have multiple forms. You have a special edit form, a special view form, a special, new form. You can actually have it go and to the specific forms. And I think somebody said something about doing the reset thing when you load a new form. You can totally do that. So what I have over here on this table is kind of some like suggestions. So on new, out of the box, it says new form, SharePoint form 1. Let's say, that's your default name of your form, and you can rename that if you want. I hate the wrapping this did on here. Here's your suggestions is I would suggest that you reset the form. So it resets the form completely. It goes to new form, and it says, what is the name of the new form? Or it sends a new form command to the name of the form. Then it navigates to the screen name if you have a specific screen for new forms or edit or view. And that none is just a transition. There's all kinds of transition options. I don't really use those that much, but you can if you want to be like all fancy with it. And these guys are pretty repetitive, the on edit and on view. On save is just you submitting the form. It saves the forms. You don't really need to change it, but it's kind of good to know. So you can actually make custom buttons in here. So you could use the submit form and add that to your save button. Same thing with on cancel. If you want to reset the form, clear it out. This out of the box resets the form, but you can create like a reset button on the form if you want. But these are the things that are part of that integration actions section. All right, this is what I brought up a bunch of times is the difference between what you can do in PowerApps, standalone PowerApp, Canvas app versus SharePoint app or SharePoint app. PowerApp SharePoint form, that is a mouthful. So what's good about it, it's integrated into the SharePoint list. The mobile access only with a standalone PowerApp. The permissions are a little bit more are different with a PowerApp, a standalone PowerApp. With SharePoint, it's based on the list permissions. And one thing to really know is that if your users or your, all have edit permission to your list, they also have permission to edit your form. So I would suggest you make them contributors and not editors. A contributor cannot modify the SharePoint, the PowerApps form. You can embed both in a SharePoint page. I've never had to do that with a SharePoint form and or PowerApp form, but there's different things you can do it based on, like when the page is loading. You cannot export a SharePoint the SharePoint form. It's not a standalone app. You can't back it up the way that you can with a standalone app. One other thing that really stinks is you can't publish the app to Teams. But what you can do is you can add the list to a tab within Teams, and then your form is in Teams, but it's not as integrated as it would be in Microsoft Teams. So,
Rachel, we have a question. Does this work with document libraries with many metadata columns? And is there anything special to know about managed metadata columns in PowerApps?
You can use managed metadata fields in there. I have used them. I am using them right now. They're kind of like a similar drop-down kind of scenario, or you can do like a search on them. They kind of just turn into a combo box. As far as document libraries, have I done this with document libraries? I don't remember doing it with a document library because it's a little different. It would be nice to, though. Yeah, I've only done it with lists, and then some of those lists have like add attachment, but I know that's not like the best way of doing things. You can have that attachment field on one of these Power App forms
Yeah,
if you need
I
to.
recall Microsoft announced bringing that to document libraries, but I'm not sure if that's rolled out yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played with it, so I don't want to like comment on it until I've touched it, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I just want to see what it does. Any other questions? Because I'm almost pretty much at the end.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay, cool. And that was kind of like it. Those are my tips and tricks. And yeah, thank you guys. You're my first like doing something like this. You're my first audience for it. So if I sounded super nervous, it's because I am.
Well done, Rachel. Good job.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Yeah, it was great.
Awesome. And here's my contact info. I'm still slowly working on a blog. I'm just, homeschooling an 11-year-old right now. So, so awesome. I'll wait around for any other questions.
And just some positive feedback, Rachel, if you go into the Q&A.
Thank you.
All right, so we can pass it back to Mike.
All right, I'll stop presenting.
I'm getting there.
And oh, by the way, I will be on the after hours drinking thing. I need a drink after this.
Nice.
At least she's honest.
All right. You guys see my screen?
They can.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much, Rachel. That was awesome. I know I learned some things in there, so good stuff. As she alluded to, we can all get together and talk in the cyber mingle. You guys can ask questions more directly and have all kinds of cool conversations about what's going on and what works and what doesn't. So, anywho's, on to community events. So, Microsoft 365 is running a virtual marathon. That is going to be on May 27th and 28th. So that's week after next, I think. Something like that.
That's awesome.
That would be next week, actually.
Next week. Okay. So this is a completely free event and lots of content. And one of the main sponsors of this is actually oh my gosh, I was going to say it and now I'm missing it. Joel Olson. There we go.
Yep. Joel Olson.
Joel Olson. So
Yep,
good stuff. We expect good things of that.
Yep, he works with Proficient now, and there are other speakers that they may know as well.
Yep, friend of the user group, Chrissy Gaelic is going to be there. She'll be one of the speakers there.
Yep. I'll be presenting as well, and I'm sure there's other names out
Awesome.
there.
I'm sure there are. Why? All right, so here's that information again and a little bit more. We've got info on Ignite Conference 2020 and the IT Pro, Women IT Pros monthly call.
I am on those calls all the time.
Okay.
Just a heads up.
Awesome. So very interested in if we're missing anything. So guys, please use the Q&A and let us know if we're missing anything. and while I go through the rest of these user group slides, and then we'll check that out. So the Rhode Island SharePoint user group. It's another thing that's hosted by also a friend of the group, DRC Hess, who gave us our presentation last month. And they get together on the first Tuesday of every month. And apparently they have a shiny new logo. That's very cool. We have the Hartford Office 365 user group, which is the last Wednesday or Thursday of every month. So you're going to want to check their meetup site for that. And that's hosted by Jared Matfess. And of course, the Granite State user group, which is the first Thursday of every month. And that's by Julie and Jim Wilcox. Julie Turner and Jim Wilcox. Boy, I said that like they were married. That's not accurate.
Yeah. Mike, we do have another event that a user just submitted.
Okay, great.
It's the Collab 365 Global Con 2. So
Oh, is that coming up already?
Posting a link to that.
They had a beginner's day yesterday. That was pretty good. I still do the beginner stuff because you learn some real cool tips from that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are great.
Yeah, Laura Rogers was on there. She was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Laura's phenomenal.
Love her. I swear half the stuff I've learned from her.
She is one of the many that I draw from. So, all right. We also have these other groups that meet at various times. I just highly recommend checking out their websites. Some of these local, some of these are online only. So, well, I guess they're probably all online now, but yeah, some of them are global. Like I'm pretty sure the Power BI one is a global group that just meets online. So for next month, we have Mr. Chris Bortlick of Microsoft coming to present for us, and he's going to talk to us about getting ready for Project Cortex. So the machines are coming for us. Be prepared.
Skynet, you mean?
Yes, I'm actually very excited about this. I can't wait to see this this presentation.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
Chris is an awesome presenter as well. So he always brings us the newest and shiniest things out of the Microsoft labs to play with. So should be a really good time. Looking forward to that. This is our community announcement slides. We're pretty much moving this over to our Cyber Mingle, but if you guys do have anything that you want us to mention, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A. Or if you want to just have a more open conversation, join us for the Cyber Mingle afterwards. All right. We really like being a part of the community and getting people connected. So for those of you that are looking for careers or looking for experienced SharePoint people or others, you know, reach out. We'll make that happen. Right.
Good thing this isn't radio because that would be dead air.
Sorry about that.